My name's Eric, I'm 36, and I have two kids, Sam, 9, and Lily, 6. Their mom and I divorced 4 years ago. It wasn't messy or dramatic, just two people who realized we weren't making each other better anymore. We split custody pretty evenly, and when I have the kids, I'm all in. Pancake breakfasts, Sunday hikes, Lego towers that collapse halfway up. My apartment is loud, a little chaotic, and sometimes smells faintly of glitter glue, but it's home. My family, though, they've always been a little more polished. My sister Claire especially. She's 38, child-free by choice, and married to this guy named Greg who wears turtlenecks even when it's hot out and ends sentences with full stop. She lives 20 minutes from my parents' place, where Christmas dinner is held every year without fail, cloth napkins, matching plates, a carved roast that's always slightly undercooked because Mom insists that medium rare is elegant. I've been bringing Sam and Lily to Christmas dinner since they were toddlers. Some years, they've fallen asleep under the tree. Some years, they've knocked over a few ornaments. Once, Sam licked a candy cane and stuck it to the window. They're kids. They laugh too loud sometimes. They bicker over who gets the last roll, but they're good kids. Sweet, funny, bright-eyed. They always bring handmade cards for Grandma and Grandpa. Lily spends weeks coloring hers in glitter pens, and Sam always signs his with an extra big S, because he says it looks like a superhero logo. Last year, my dad told me to bring them over an hour later than everyone else, so they don't get bored waiting for food. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe Mom was running behind, or the guest list was a bit tighter. The timing felt off, but I wasn't in the mood to pick a fight, and the kids didn't seem to notice. But looking back, I should have seen it. That was the first warning sign. Claire never outright said anything about my kids. She's a master of passive-aggressive silence. If Lily dropped a spoon, she'd wince like it shattered. If Sam laughed too loud, she'd sigh and glance over her wine glass like she was enduring a war zone. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, Greg asked if I'd considered behavioral therapy, just to nip things in the bud early. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. Still, I never thought it would escalate. We're not a huge family. Just me, Claire, my parents, and an elderly aunt who's now in assisted living. There are no cousins or distant uncles coming in from out of state. So when I got the group text about Christmas Eve dinner this year, I figured it would be like every other year. I had Sam and Lily with me for the holiday week, and they were already excited. Lily had drawn a snowman family labeled me, Sam, Daddy, Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Claire, and me and Greg. I swear I didn't coach her on that. And Sam had practiced a piano version of Jingle Bells to perform for everyone. We even picked out matching sweaters. Mine said, Papa Elf. Theirs said, Little Elf, with reindeer antlers stitched on. Lily insisted we wear them to dinner. But then, on the morning of Christmas Eve, I got a text from Claire. It read, Hey, Mom says your kids make too much noise. Maybe skip dinner this year. It's just too much. At first, I thought it was a joke. I stared at the screen, waiting for a follow-up. A winky face. Just kidding. Something. But nothing came. Just that one cold, sterile sentence. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Dad. I answered, hoping, praying, that he'd tell me Claire was just being dramatic. That of course we were still welcome. That he wanted to see his grandkids open presents and eat too many cookies. Instead, he sighed. Eric, he said, it's been a long year. We thought maybe things could be a little quieter this Christmas. Keep things peaceful. Peaceful. I repeated, stunned. They're children, Dad. They're not starting bar fights. They're just excited. It's Christmas. I know, son, he said. But Claire's hosting this year. And you know how she gets. It's just easier this way. He actually said that. It's just easier this way. I felt the blood drain from my face. Sam and Lily were in the living room, building a pillow fort. Laughing. Completely unaware that their own grandparents were talking about them like they were a problem to be avoided. I hung up without saying goodbye. For about an hour, I paced my apartment. I didn't cry. I was too angry for that. But I definitely sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the carpet, wondering how we got here. When did my kids become too much? When did my own family start viewing them as background noise to be muted? Lily walked in with a string of plastic beads she'd made into a bracelet. This is for Grandma, she said, holding it out proudly. That's when I made my decision. I told the kids we were doing something different this year. Something way cooler than dinner at Aunt Claire's. We bundled up, wore our matching sweaters, and went to their favorite pizza place. The one with the arcade in the back and the little claw machine that's rigged but still fun. We had cheesy breadsticks, root beer floats, and played skee-ball until our fingers hurt. I didn't check my phone once. By the time we got home, it was nearly 11 p.m. I tucked the kids into bed, kissed them on the forehead, and finally checked my phone. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from Mom, Dad, and Claire. I didn't respond. I blocked all three of them. But then, at midnight, my voicemail dinged again. Just one more. I don't know why, but I listened. It was my mom. Her voice was quiet, like she didn't know the recording had started. At the 042 mark, I heard it. A whisper. Not to me, but near the phone, maybe to my dad. Maybe now he'll finally learn his place. I froze. Learn my place? I played it back 3 times to make sure I heard it right. My place. That was the moment my chest tightened. The moment everything fell into focus. They hadn't just excluded my kids because they were loud. They didn't want them there because we weren't convenient anymore. Because I wasn't convenient. A single dad with 2 noisy, glitter-covered reminders that life doesn't always follow the Claire and Greg blueprint. They wanted peace. I was about to give them something else entirely. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the whisper playing over and over in my head like a broken record. Maybe now he'll finally learn his place. My place. What was that supposed to mean? That I was supposed to stay on the sidelines? Show up only when invited? Act grateful for crumbs? Be the convenient son, the quiet one, the one who didn't ruffle Claire's perfect little dinner parties with my noisy, imperfect kids? The next morning, Christmas Day, I did what any dad with half a backbone would do. I hugged Sam and Lily a little tighter. I helped them open presents while pretending not to hear the vibrations from my blocked collars buzzing against the nightstand. They didn't notice anything was wrong, which I took as both a blessing and a warning. They trusted me to shield them from this. Around noon, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled up the photo archives. Old pictures from when Claire and I were kids. Birthdays, holidays, beach trips. I was looking for something, proof, maybe, that this hadn't always been so one-sided. That once upon a time, I wasn't the second-class son. That there was a version of my family where I wasn't background noise to Claire's spotlight. But the deeper I went, the more obvious the pattern became. There was Claire, age 6, with a Barbie dream house the size of a coffee table. My 6th birthday, a plastic fire truck and a cake that said, "Happy birthday, buddy," because they forgot to order the custom one I picked out. Claire's high school graduation, full album, catered party, framed diploma, speeches. Mine, a single blurry picture of me standing in a wrinkled gown next to Dad, who looks like he's checking his watch. I closed the laptop. It wasn't new. It had just become impossible to ignore. I decided I wasn't going to confront them yet. Not right away. I wanted to wait, observe, listen. And the perfect opportunity came 2 weeks later, Mom's birthday. Every year, without fail, we did dinner at her place. Claire always planned it. Greg always brought wine. I always brought Sam and Lily, who always brought handmade gifts. This year, I waited to see if they'd even invite me. They did. Or rather, Claire did. Her message came through email. Not a text. An email. "Hi, Eric. We're planning a small birthday dinner for Mom on the 14th. Just adults this time. It's what Mom requested. Hope you understand." No mention of Sam or Lily. No apology for Christmas. No acknowledgement that anything had happened. Just hope you understand. I didn't respond right away. I called my mom instead, and to my surprise, she actually picked up. "Hey, Mom," I said, voice steady. "Got Claire's email. Just wanted to double check. Did you really ask for an adult-only dinner?" There was a pause. A little too long. "I did," she finally said, but it was quiet. Hesitant. "You sure? Because Sam and Lily already made you cards. And Lily wrote you a song on that little ukulele I got her." Another pause. This time longer. "I just thought it might be easier. Less stressful," she said. "Claire's been doing so much lately. She's really stepped up." There it was again. Easier. Everything was about what made life easier for Claire. Not what made life meaningful. Not who showed up. Just what made Claire shine brightest. I wanted to shout, "Mom, she lives 20 minutes away and doesn't have kids. What exactly is she stepping up from?" But I didn't. I thanked her. Hung up. And this time, I didn't block them. I wanted to see what happened next. The night of the dinner, I did something petty, I won't lie. I showed up. Not with the kids. Just me. I parked across the street, waited until I saw Greg's car pull in, and then walked right up the path and rang the doorbell. Claire answered. Her face dropped. Eric, she said flatly. Happy birthday to Mom, I said, holding up a little gift bag. Thought I'd swing by. Just me. No noise. She stood in the doorway for a second like she couldn't decide whether to let me in or not. Eventually, she stepped aside. Inside, everything was as polished as ever. Table set with silver cutlery, candles lit, jazz music playing low. Greg was uncorking a bottle in the kitchen. My dad looked up from the living room with a strained smile. Mom was in the dining room, arranging place cards. Place cards. Like this was a wedding reception. I handed her the gift, just a simple necklace Lily picked out online. Cheap, but thoughtful. Mom took it without really looking at it. That's sweet, Eric, she said. But you didn't have to. I know, I said. But I wanted to. She gave me a tight smile and turned back to her place cards. That was when I saw it. My name wasn't on any of them. Greg, Claire, Mom, Dad. No fifth seat. I wasn't expected. Claire called from the kitchen. Eric, we weren't sure you'd be coming. Why's that? I asked, knowing full well why. She shrugged, walking into the room with 2 glasses of wine. She handed one to Mom. After Christmas, we figured maybe you needed space. You mean after you disinvited my kids? She blinked. I didn't disinvite them. I passed along Mom's message. Mom looked down at her wine glass. I nodded slowly. Got it. And the message was what? That Sam's laugh ruins your turkey? That Lily's glitter pens offend your placemats? Greg appeared behind her, looking uncomfortable. Let's not make this into a scene, he said. I turned to him. Greg, I've seen wallpaper with more personality than you. I'm not worried about making a scene. Eric, Dad said sharply. Enough. That was it. The word. Enough. Like I was a child. Like I was causing something. I laughed. You're right. It is enough. I'm done. And I walked out. Not dramatically. Not with the door slam. I just walked out. That night, I sat with Sam and Lily on the living room floor, and we had our own little celebration. We made pancakes. Watched a movie. I let them stay up too late. Lily sang the ukulele song for me instead. She called it Birthday Stars. It made me cry. That should have been the end. That should have been the turning point. But it got worse. In late February, I found out, through a mutual friend of Claire's, that she was planning Mom and Dad's 40th wedding anniversary. A big event. Rented space. Invitations. I hadn't heard a thing. So I checked the website Claire had built for the event. Of course she had a website, and there it was. Guest list, RSVP form, and no mention of me or my kids. Not even in the photo slideshow. It was like we didn't exist. The most recent family picture? From 5 years ago. Before my divorce. Before my life got messy. I stared at that page for 20 minutes, my jaw clenched, before finally picking up the phone and calling my mom one last time. She didn't answer. I texted her. Am I really not invited to your anniversary party? 3 dots appeared. Then they vanished. And nothing came back. A day later, I got an email. From Claire. Subject line, let's keep this civil. The body of the email was 2 paragraphs. Short. Cold. Sanitized. Eric, I understand you're upset. But this event is about celebrating Mom and Dad, not creating more tension. Given the tone of your recent messages and the disruption you've caused at family gatherings, we felt it would be best to keep the event intimate. You're welcome to send a card or video message, and I'm sure they'd appreciate that. Hope you understand. Hope you understand. That was the moment I stopped waiting for understanding. That was the moment I stopped being heard and started planning. Because they didn't just push me out of a dinner or a birthday. They erased me. They erased my children. And they thought I'd just sit there and take it. But they forgot something. They forgot who helped Dad through his hip surgery. Who brought Mom groceries during lockdown. Who gave Claire a loan when Greg's business almost collapsed. They forgot who had been quietly keeping score. They forgot I had receipts. Literally. And now? It was time to collect. I didn't get out of bed for 2 days. That might sound pathetic, but that email, let's keep this civil. It hit like a final punch to the ribs after you're already on the floor. The kind where you don't even flinch anymore because you're too numb. For the first time in a long time, I genuinely didn't know what to do. Not as a father. Not as a son. Not as a brother. Just as a person. I kept rereading Claire's words. Disruption you've caused at family gatherings. The only thing I'd ever caused was showing up with my kids, And the only disruption I brought was love that wasn't polished or quiet or pre-approved. It was late February. Still cold, gray, unforgiving. I told Sam and Lily I wasn't feeling well, and thankfully they were with their mom that weekend, so I didn't have to keep up the brave face for too long. I turned off my phone, pulled the blanket over my head, and for about 48 hours, I sat in that silence, soaking in a truth I hadn't wanted to face. I was grieving people who were still alive. It felt worse than my divorce. At least with that, there were reasons, conversations, an ending. But this was a slow erasure. 1,000 tiny cuts over years until one day you realize you're bleeding out in an empty room and nobody noticed. On the third morning, I got up and looked in the mirror. I looked tired, like someone twice my age. There was stubble that hadn't turned into a beard yet, just enough to make me look like I gave up. I was wearing the same hoodie from 2 days ago, but for the first time in a while, I didn't flinch when I looked at myself. I didn't look broken. I looked angry. And beneath the anger, I looked focused. I showered, cleaned the apartment, brewed a strong cup of coffee. Then I sat down and opened a blank Google Doc. And I made a list. It was titled, What They Forgot. $7,000 loan to Claire and Greg in 2019, never repaid. No contract, but I have the Venmo receipts. 2 months of groceries for mom during the pandemic. At least $1,200. Also have receipts. Hours spent caring for dad post-surgery. I used 2 weeks of PTO. Claire visited twice. Claire's wedding. I paid for half the DJ. No one ever mentioned it again. Every family holiday I hosted at my apartment because theirs wasn't ready. Gifts, gas money, babysitting favors, emergency pickups. All the times I said, it's fine, when it really wasn't. The list was 4 pages long by the time I was done. Not because I wanted revenge right away, but because I needed proof, for myself, that I hadn't imagined the imbalance, that I hadn't been dramatic, that I'd been holding this family up for years while they smiled for holiday photos and quietly cut me out of frame. Once the list was finished, I sat back and took a breath. And that's when something clicked. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table anymore. I was going to build my own. For years, I'd worked a steady IT job at a mid-sized logistics firm. Nothing flashy, just enough to support the kids, pay the bills, and occasionally treat myself to concert tickets or take out sushi when the mood struck. But I'd always had a side hustle. Tech consulting, small business digital setups, website builds. Most of it came through word of mouth and Craigslist, and I'd always told myself I'd never rely on it full-time because it wasn't stable. But stability hadn't exactly done me any favors. So I pulled out my notebook, the same one where Sam had doodled a spaceship and Lily wrote, "I love you, Dad," in shaky bubble letters, and I wrote across the top, "This is your new beginning." For the next 3 months, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. I redid my portfolio, reached out to old clients, built a small website from scratch with testimonials, packages, and a blog. I even offered free digital audits to local businesses and got 3 paid gigs from that alone. I took on 2 projects a week, sometimes more, often staying up past midnight after the kids fell asleep. But it didn't feel like burnout. It felt like momentum. Every invoice I sent, every client I onboard, every "thank you so much, Eric, we couldn't have done it without you," was a brick in the foundation of a life I was building, without the approval of people who never really saw me in the first place. And the best part? Sam and Lily noticed. "Why are you always typing, Daddy?" Lily asked one night, curling up next to me on the couch. "I'm building something," I said. "A fort?" she asked. "Kind of," I smiled. "A future." She thought about that for a second, then nodded like she got it. "I want a sparkly one." "Done," I said. By mid-May, I'd matched my old monthly income. By June, I'd surpassed it. I put in my 2-week notice at the IT job, and for the first time in my adult life, I was my own boss. With the extra income, I didn't buy a new car or take a vacation. I got Sam a secondhand electric keyboard and enrolled Lily in art classes. I repainted their room, upgraded their beds, started meal prepping with them on Sundays. Little things that made our home ours. Every night before bed, I'd update the list in my notebook. But now it wasn't about what they forgot. It was about what I was remembering. That I was enough. That my kids were more than enough. That the family I'd built, noisy and imperfect and full of glitter, was something to be proud of. Still, I won't lie, there was a part of me that wanted them to see it, to feel it. And then, Fate handed me the perfect opportunity. In July, I got a letter in the mail. A formal invitation. Embossed, perfumed, and signed. Claire and Greg were renewing their vows. A whole ceremony. Outdoor venue. Elegant attire requested. Champagne reception. And, of course, adults only. But this time, I was invited. Eric plus guest. No mention of Sam and Lily. The second I saw it, my hands clenched. Not because I wanted to go, I didn't. But because the audacity was staggering. They'd frozen me out of Christmas, erased me from their anniversary slideshow, ignored every olive branch I'd ever offered, and now they wanted me there, as part of the audience, to clap politely while Claire twirled in another white dress? No, but I wasn't going to say no. I was going to say yes, and bring the storm with me. I RSVP'd immediately. No +1. Just me. And then I started planning. I'm not talking about crashing the wedding or throwing a drink on anyone. That's not my style. I'm a builder, a strategist. And this wasn't about chaos. This was about clarity. The weeks leading up to the vow renewal, I worked quietly behind the scenes. Not in anger. In calculation. I updated my professional portfolio with screenshots of the website I'd built for Claire's wedding years ago, back when she'd forgotten to give me credit. I gathered receipts, literally and digitally, from every dollar I'd poured into family events, groceries, and favors over the years. I printed it all out, neatly, in color-coded folders, and I began crafting something else. Not for Claire, not for Greg, not even for my parents. For me, it was a letter, or a speech, or maybe just a long, uninterrupted truth. Something that captured what the last few years had really been. The slow exile, the quiet cruelty, the 1,000 tiny rejections disguised as boundaries. Something that said, I see you. I see what you did. And I'm still here. I wasn't sure if I'd read it out loud, or send it in the mail, or leave it in an envelope under someone's plate at the reception. But I knew it needed to be written. Because this wasn't just about proving a point. It was about reclaiming the part of me that they thought they could erase. The messy, loud, deeply loving dad who showed up even when he wasn't invited. The brother who gave without keeping score, until now. The son who finally realized that sometimes, family is just another word for a battlefield. The vow renewal was coming, and I'd be there. Not as a guest, not as a ghost, but as the version of me they never saw coming. I arrived at the venue exactly 23 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to start. It was one of those rented countryside estates with overpriced roses in clay pots lining the cobblestone walkway, and signs painted in faux cursive that said things like love, laughter, and a lifetime after. The kind of place that makes people pretend they're royalty for a day. Claire's kind of place. I wore a tailored navy blue suit. Not expensive, but clean, fitted, sharp. The kind of suit you wear when you want to look like you belong in any room, even the ones that once tried to shut you out. And I brought something with me. Not a date, not a gift, a briefcase, leather, black, unassuming. But inside it, every piece of the life I'd built while they were busy erasing me. Documents, invoices, emails, screenshots, Venmo records, printouts of text messages, photos of Sam and Lily's handmade gifts, the ones that never even made it to the fridge. Records of every family favor, every sacrifice, every overlooked contribution. But more importantly, a truth bomb they weren't expecting. The setup had taken weeks. It started small, a call to my accountant. Just a casual conversation about small business incorporation, deductible expenses, and whether unpaid loans between family members could technically be categorized as business write-offs if they were tied to a service or informal agreement. The answer was, in some cases, yes. Then came the legal consult. 1 hour, $275. Worth every penny. I explained the $7,000 I'd loaned Claire and Greg in 2019, originally meant to help bridge the gap after Greg's consulting firm tanked. There was no contract, no interest, just a promise over coffee that they'd pay me back within 6 months. It had been 4 years. Legally, my chances of recouping that money were slim. Morally, I had every right to make noise about it. The lawyer smiled at me across the table. You're not here to sue, he said. You're here to send a message. Exactly. So I got to work. Step 1. I rebuilt the original invoice I'd made for their wedding website. The one I'd designed from scratch in 2017. Claire never paid me, said it was a gift. And I had let it slide, because that's what family does, right? Except now it was back, in full color, with itemized charges. Step 2. I compiled a report. Yes, an actual report, titled Uncompensated Family Labor, 2015 to 2023. It detailed every holiday I'd hosted when Claire couldn't clean her place. Every time I'd babysat Greg's niece when they were stuck. Every time I'd picked up mom's prescriptions, shoveled their driveway, or driven dad to physical therapy. It wasn't petty. It was precise. And it served a purpose. Because Step 3 was the card. You know, the kind you leave in the gift basket at a wedding or a vow renewal. The one that says congratulations, with some glittery cursive and maybe a $50 bill tucked inside. Mine said this: Dear Claire and Greg, wishing you a beautiful day and an even more honest tomorrow. May your vows be stronger than your memory. Eric. I placed it in a pale cream envelope, wrote, for the happy couple in gold pen, and sealed it with a wax stamp I ordered off Etsy. A tiny stamp shaped like a wolf. Symbolic? Maybe. Dramatic? Definitely. But this wasn't just about style. It was about timing. Because timing was everything. When I arrived at the estate, the parking lot was already full of black SUVs and luxury sedans. Clearly, Claire and Greg spared no expense. Champagne flutes were clinking in the distance, and a string quartet was tuning up under a white canopy. Guests in pastel suits and flower print dresses milled around the courtyard, laughing politely. I slipped in unnoticed, nodding at the usher like I'd been expected. My name was on the guest list. Not because they wanted me there, but because they needed me to look like the difficult brother who never showed up when it came time for the speech. But I had no intention of missing this. I made my way to the welcome table, where gift envelopes were being dropped into a white decorative box. The box had Claire and Greg Forever etched on the front in metallic script. I slid mine in. Then I did one more thing. I handed a sealed manila envelope, labeled to be opened after the ceremony, to the young woman managing the welcome desk. Hi, I said, polite but firm. I've been asked to give this to the officiant. It's the couple's final guest announcement. They wanted it read aloud after the vows. She hesitated. Is this approved? Absolutely. Greg signed off himself. She looked unsure, but I smiled, nodded, and walked away before she could protest. I didn't lie. Greg had signed off. He just didn't know it. A few weeks earlier, I'd sent him a short email, pretending to be a family friend helping with last-minute coordination. I asked if he'd be okay with a brief message from the extended family being read after the ceremony, as a surprise tribute. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a sure, as long as it doesn't run too long, LOL. I screenshotted the reply and included it in the envelope. Inside, a printout of the guest list, annotated with the names of every person Claire and Greg had accepted help from over the years, many of whom they never acknowledged. At the bottom, it read, Some vows are made in private, others in public. And then there are the ones we make silently. To the people who held us up when we weren't looking, may we always remember those vows too. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't cruel. But it would land. Because the people in that crowd, they didn't know the truth. They thought Claire was the golden daughter, the glue of the family, the hero who took care of her aging parents while her brother just disappeared. That narrative was about to shatter. But I wasn't done yet. Inside the reception tent, I took my assigned seat. Yes, they gave me one, at the very back corner table, near the speaker stand, oddly enough. As I sat down, I saw a familiar face 2 tables over. Derek, my cousin on my dad's side. We weren't close growing up, but we always got along. He gave me a nod, then stood and walked over. Hey man, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Didn't think I'd see you here. Yeah, well, I said, sipping water. Figured I'd show up this time. He lowered his voice. Your mom? She looked surprised. Claire too. Good, I said. Let them be. Derek leaned in. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you planning something? I smiled, not answering. He nodded slowly. Okay, just whatever it is, make it count. And that was the thing. It wasn't about embarrassing them. It wasn't about shouting or ruining their big day. That would have given them sympathy. Turned me into the angry, jealous brother again. No, this was about shifting the narrative. Quietly, precisely, permanently. The ceremony began. Claire walked down the aisle in a designer gown, Greg waiting with that stiff smile he always wore when cameras were near. They exchanged flowery vows, made jokes about weathering storms and growing together. Mom dabbed her eyes. Dad nodded proudly. I stayed silent. After the ceremony, as the officiant closed his leather-bound notebook, he pulled a card from his inside pocket. "Oh, one final note," he said into the microphone. The couple requested a brief reading on behalf of their extended family and longtime supporters. They felt it reflected the spirit of gratitude they carry into this next chapter. Claire's eyes flicked toward him, confused. Greg looked equally puzzled, but no one stopped it, because it didn't sound like a threat. And then he read it, word for word. Some vows are made in private, others in public. You could feel the shift. People straightened. Heads turned. Claire's smile froze. By the time he reached the end, you could hear a pin drop. Then polite applause. Nothing dramatic. But the air had changed. And I hadn't even opened my mouth. That was the first blow. The second? Well, that was already in motion. Because 2 days before the ceremony, I'd sent an anonymous tip to a lifestyle blog Greg had done an interview with last year. One where he praised building from nothing and never accepting help. The tip included photos of my loan receipts, screenshots of texts, copies of emails where Claire asked me to just cover it this once. I didn't frame it as revenge. I framed it as a correction. A little update to the hero narrative they'd built around themselves. I wasn't sure if the blog would run it. But that wasn't the point. The point was, they knew someone new. The armor was cracking, and I was just getting started. They say revenge is best served cold. But this wasn't cold. This was calculated, calm, surgical. And it didn't explode, it unraveled. The morning after the vow renewal, I sat in my kitchen sipping coffee while Sam and Lily built a Lego roller coaster behind me. The notification came in like a whisper, a ping on my old Twitter account I barely used. Someone had tagged me. Wow, this didn't age well. Attached was a screenshot from Greg's year-old blog interview, the one where he preached about bootstrapping success. Below it was a link. I clicked. It was a post on a mid-tier lifestyle and entrepreneurship blog, nothing huge, but with a loyal following. The kind that loves to call out hypocrisy and inflated success stories. The headline hit like a drumbeat. Hollow vows. The truth behind Claire and Greg's built from nothing brand. I read the whole thing in one long, unblinking stare. It was perfect. No names thrown under the bus. No direct accusations. Just a side-by-side of Greg's quotes about refusing handouts, next to screenshots of Venmo transactions, emails asking for support, and thank you notes that had never been made public. It asked one question at the end. Is it really a hand-built empire if it stands on borrowed bricks? The post started gaining traction. People love a good story, especially when the shine wears off the supposedly untouchable. By noon, Greg had made his account private. By 2 p.m., the blog comments were flooded with stories from other people, vendors who'd never been paid, a former intern at Greg's firm who said he was paid in gift cards, even a cousin on Claire's side who chimed in. Eric's always been the real one in the family. I didn't say a word. Not online. Not to anyone. Because my part was done. All I had to do now was watch. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I normally don't answer those. But something told me to this time. Eric, the voice said. It was Dad. I almost didn't recognize him. He sounded older. Smaller. Yeah. A pause. I read some things. Online. About Greg. About Claire. I stayed silent. I didn't know, he said finally. I didn't realize how much you carried. He sounded like he meant it. Like maybe, just maybe, the fog was lifting. You didn't want to know, I said quietly. There's a difference. Another pause. Then, you're right. That was new. I'm sorry, he added. Also new. And I believed him, in that moment at least. Not because he suddenly saw me, but because the illusion had shattered. Claire and Greg had curated a perfect little world for years, one where I was the messy outlier, the one with noisy kids and a chip on his shoulder. But now people were asking questions. And Dad, for the first time, didn't have answers. They're saying the blog post is fake, he continued. Claire says you're bitter, that you're trying to sabotage her. I laughed once. Let them. He hesitated. Is it true? What part? All of it. I thought about lying, about brushing it off. But instead, I said the most honest thing I could. None of it had to happen. I gave them 100 chances to treat me like family. They used every one of them to remind me I wasn't welcome. Dad didn't argue. Can I see the kids sometime? He asked. I didn't answer right away. We'll see, I I said eventually. But I'm not pretending anymore. If you want to be part of their life, it's going to be on our terms. Not Claire's. Not yours. He agreed. I don't know if it stuck, but the tone had changed. The next day, I got a text from my mom. Just 3 words. I miss you. No punctuation. No apology. I didn't respond. Let her sit with it. Like I had. Meanwhile, the fallout began to snowball. Greg's consulting firm, which was mostly smoke and mirrors to begin with, lost 2 clients. Both local businesses I'd happened to help with digital work over the years. They reached out to me privately to say thanks for the heads up, without directly confirming they'd seen the blog post. Claire, who'd just started a lifestyle Instagram account full of home decor and quiet luxury tips, began bleeding followers. Not because of anything I said. I hadn't said a word publicly, but because people could smell the phoniness now. Her engagement tanked. She turned off comments, then deleted 3 months of posts. And then came the invitation. Well, not an invitation. More like a peace offering wrapped in panic. It arrived in my inbox a week later. Subject, family brunch? Claire. She wanted to talk. Said it had all been a misunderstanding. Claimed she missed the kids. Said she was willing to move forward. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I clicked reply. Claire, you've always been good at moving forward, usually over people. I'm not interested in brunch. I'm interested in accountability. You don't get to erase us, then invite us back when it's convenient. Sam and Lily aren't noise. They're joy. I hope someday you learn the difference. Until then, enjoy the silence. Eric. I hit send. No mic drop. No dramatic music. Just a line in the sand. Weeks passed. The blog post eventually fell out of rotation, replaced by the next viral outrage. Greg stayed quiet. Claire stopped posting entirely. My parents sent 2 more texts, one of them a photo of me as a toddler with the caption, "Found this. Miss these days." I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish them, but because I'd finally accepted something. Not everyone gets to come with you, even if they share your last name, even if they knew you when you still had braces and called Fruit Loops dinner. Some people choose to build pedestals instead of tables. And when they knock you off those pedestals enough times, you eventually learn to stop climbing. It's been 4 months. Sam's piano lessons are going great. Lily's art was featured in the school newsletter. We have Sunday night movie marathons, matching pajamas, and a front door sign that says, "Enter loudly." Our little world is messy, unfiltered, alive, and finally, free. I used to think revenge meant taking something away from the people who hurt you. But real revenge? It's showing them what they never got to ruin. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. My family tried to write me out of the story, so I wrote a better one without them.